For a landlocked state, summertime in Vermont offers all sorts of water-based recreation. The many lakes, rivers, and swimming holes around the state provide opportunities to cool down wherever you are. But anyone who spends time on the water in Vermont knows that the quality of that water can change quickly.
It could be greener than pea soup here on Tuesday, and it could be crystal clear on Saturday.
Mike Roach is a volunteer water quality monitor on Missisquoi Bay. One of the biggest issues for Lake Champlain, and certainly the one that's in the news the most, is blue-green algae.
The title blue-green algae is actually a little bit of a misnomer because it's not an algae, it's a cyanobacteria. It's a bacterium, cyanobacteria. It is a planktonic organism, which means it floats in the water column and can't swim. It photosynthesizes, so it's taking its energy from the sun.
Mike Winslow is a scientist with the Lake Champlain Committee, the organization that oversees the monitoring program. He and his team train volunteers around the state how to spot and identify areas of concern.
They look like a paint spilled on the water. There's no structure to the bloom itself. If you were to take a stick and try to lift it up, it would just drip right off the stick and not stay. Maybe coat it like paint, but you're not going to see any individual stringy things hanging off.
Identifying potentially harmful algae can be tricky because it's naturally present in the lake anyway, and not all concentrations or blooms release harmful toxins. The algae can also move in and out of areas very rapidly.
The blooms are triggered by high nutrient levels, high water temperatures, and still water. So we'll get a period of heat wave, you're more likely to see a bloom. You get areas of the lake with higher nutrient concentrations like Missisquoi Bay, St. Albans Bay, you're more likely to see blooms there. Under some conditions, which we don't really understand, the algae produce substances that are toxic.
When the blooms do become toxic, children and pets are the most vulnerable, although anyone can be affected.
The toxins generally cause gastrointestinal illness, vomiting, diarrhea. They can, if inhaled, cause respiratory distress, sort of like in allergies. You get sore throat, runny nose, watery eyes, something like that.
Winslow says that while toxic algae is, and should be, a cause for concern, the good news is that most of the time, and in most parts of the lake, there is no need for concern.
We received over 600 reports during the 2013 monitoring season, and fewer than 3% actually reported back that they saw blooms.
Those that did see blooms were likely to be in areas like St. Albans and Missisquoi Bay, where shallow water, heat, nutrient overload, and just the right wind direction causes regular outbreaks. Bob Martell lives in Alberg, where he's been a volunteer water quality monitor for 8 years.
72.2. Take a good look at it, the area around, see if there's any algae, any indications of it, check the water temperature and record that, and then fill out the online report.
Martell says that while he hasn't seen the very large blooms that can occur, he has seen a number of smaller accumulations.
We've had some episodes where it maybe stayed around for a couple of days, and then it dissipated, and it was good for the rest of the season, or till the next episode. But there weren't that many.
What are some of the things that you've seen?
I have seen clear water somewhat. I'll show you some of that. I have seen putrid green water that would just stick to you. It sticks to your legs, smells, and it's horrible. I mean, those are the spectrum, basically, and anything in between.
Roach and Martell report their observations to the Lake Champlain Committee and enter their findings online for an interactive map maintained by the Vermont Department of Health. Alongside the monitor's observations are data and reports from scientists from around the state as well as New York. This kind of collaboration is key in the effort to keep tabs on the water quality of the lake.
So we're looking at water that people are most likely to be in contact with when they're kayaking and swimming.
Angela Shambow is an aquatic biologist with the state of Vermont. She spends a lot of time traveling to sites around the lake, taking samples and testing the water quality. Although the visual monitoring the volunteers are doing can provide a great deal of information, there's no way to tell without testing in a lab what kind of algae is present and whether it's toxic.
I think we probably have more than 150 different kinds of algae that we've documented on Lake Champlain over the course of the time that we've been checking. So the primary data that we collect each year from mid-April through early November is things like phosphorus, nitrogen, silica, chlorophyll, all the kinds of bits and pieces of data that will tell us what the water quality in Lake Champlain is like.
On this day, Shambaugh and fellow aquatic biologist Pete Stengel are visiting several of the 15 stations they monitor regularly.
Lake Champlain overall has really good water quality. We're concerned about it. We don't want it to deteriorate, which is why we do talk a lot about what you can do to protect water quality. We're quite fortunate. There really are only 2 locations on Lake Champlain that have thick, dense blooms that persist for a period of days to weeks rather than just disappearing relatively quickly, and those are St. Albans and Missisquoi Bay. And in those locations are where we have found the toxins at concentrations where we are concerned. Doesn't happen every year, doesn't happen every year at the same time, and that's what makes it so difficult, which is why people are concerned. But in the last 2 years, since I've been coordinating the cyanobacteria program, more than 90% of the reports that we get back each summer show that the water that the volunteers are assessing at their feet and that Pete and I are seeing out on the lake is considered generally safe. It's not that cyanobacteria aren't there, they probably are, but not at concentrations that we're worried about.
The data collected by all of these groups over time gives lake water quality experts the big picture of the lake's health.
We do produce an end-of-the-season report each year that looks at the number of reports that we received, what percentage were Category 1 clear water, what percentage were Category 2 a little bit of algae, which were Category 3 full-blown blooms.
These scientists and citizen volunteers are keeping a trained eye on the water and helping protect the health of the lake, the people, and the economy of Vermont. In Burlington, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.